Good evening, everyone. I'm Robert Smythe, Executive Director of Hippogriff's History Channel here in London, England. Here I am in front of a replica of the 1607 Godspeed that took the original 104 settlers from Great Britain to North America, thus creating the prelude to the United States of America. In this series of documentaries about antebellum United States 1812 to 1861, I have the pleasure of introducing 14 distinguished scholars who are experts in this field of American history, all from some of the most prestigious universities in the world. In this episode, I'd like to introduce the winner of this year's Ellis W. Hawley Prize for the Political Economy of the United States, the Honorable Professor Nathan Delahanty of Columbia University in New York. Among his notable publications are the Association of African American Life and History Award, What We Could Have Done Differently, and How the West Was Won. I will now leave you in his capable hands to discuss life as a skilled slave in antebellum United States.
Welcome everyone to episode 9 in our series of documentaries about the antebellum United States, 1812 to 1861. In the previous presentations, we discussed life as a northern factory owner, life as a northern factory worker, life in the rural north, life as a woman and child in the north, life as a new immigrant in the north, life as a Chinese immigrant in the west, life as a southern plantation owner, and life as a southern plantation owner's wife and child. I am Professor Nathan Delahanty, a scholar of American history at Columbia University, and I am now going to discuss life as a skilled slave. Most slaves during the antebellum period of U.S. history worked in the fields growing cash crops. After the invention of the cotton gin in 1749, there was a greater need for slaves to produce cotton. Cotton was king. Some planters, however, required slaves with specific skills and were willing to pay slave traders a premium for them. Rice planters in South Carolina and Georgia, for example, were willing to pay more for slaves from Africa's windward coast because they were skilled in rice cultivation and processing. Some slaves were carpenters, others were chefs. Most slaves came from West Central Africa and Senegambia, or the modern-day countries of Angola, Congo, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Gabon, Senegal, Gambia, and Mali. They were brought against their will across the Atlantic Ocean to North America and sold at auctions. There were 3 types of slaves: field slaves, house servants, and skilled slaves. Field slaves worked in the field from sunrise to sundown while being monitored by an overseer. House servants lived in the master's house and their work was monitored by his wife. Servants performed duties such as cooking, cleaning, serving meals, and caring for children. They received much better treatment than field slaves. Some skills arrived with the slaves from Africa, such as knowledge of various crafts like pottery, weaving, basket making, and wood carving. Others learned trades by working around other skilled workers on plantations. Some were blacksmiths, builders, masons, and leather workers. These proved highly valuable in the antebellum United States. Goods produced could be sold, and slaves could be hired out to perform tasks at other plantations. Slaves would be hired out to master craftsmen as an apprenticeship where they learned a trade. After the apprenticeship was finished, the slave would continue to work at the same wage until the contract was completed. The wage was paid to the master. Most contracts lasted 50 weeks from January 1st, also known as hiring day, to Christmas. Skilled slaves were able to keep a portion of what they earned when hired out. In this way, they were eventually able to buy their own freedom. Skilled slaves earned about $100 to $500 a year, about $2,000 to $1,200 in today's money. The average slave cost $25,000 in today's money. This means skilled slaves could take up to 13 years to buy their freedom. The alternative to being a skilled slave was to work in the fields from dawn to dusk. Many slaves were keen to learn a trade to avoid backbreaking field work. Skilled slaves made many contributions to plantations and society as a whole. They helped to keep plantations running smoothly and efficiently. They also provided goods for use on the plantation. They made wooden items such as chairs and tables. Metal workers heated iron and steel until it could be shaped and tempered in cold water. Using this method, they fabricated such items as horseshoes, hinges, pots, pokers, shovels, hooks, nails, and decorations. There were also shoemakers, tanners or leather workers, coopers who made barrels, spinners or textile makers, and weavers. These skills provided valuable resources for the plantations. Any surplus items were sold by the owner. The sale of these items would often become a source of income that would offset the fluctuations of a planter's income from crop growth. Weekly food rations, usually cornmeal, lard, meat, molasses, peas, greens, and flour, were distributed every Saturday, with some of the items given to eat. Vegetable patches and gardens, if permitted by the owner, supplied fresh produce to add to the rations. Breakfast was prepared and eaten at daybreak in the slaves' cabins. Skilled slaves wore the same clothes as regular slaves. Shirts for men were generally made of onisberg or unbleached coarse linen. Pants were made of cotton. The majority of enslaved people wore plain, sturdy leather shoes without buckles. Clothes for female slaves consisted of a one-piece frock or slip of coarse Negro cloth. Negro cloth was made of coarse threads blended together. Cotton dresses, sunbonnets, and undergarments were made from hand-woven cloth for summer and winter. New clothes were distributed on a twice-yearly basis for summer and winter. Skilled slaves were generally allowed a day off every Sunday and on infrequent holidays like Christmas and the 4th of July. On a normal day, slaves worked from sunrise to sunset. During their limited free time, the slaves gathered food, maintained their houses, cleaned, and made personal items out of wood and fabric. They engaged in singing and dancing, telling stories to their children, and spending time with their friends and family. Slavery has a profound legacy on the United States. The wealth generated by skilled slaves and field slaves helped fund the growth of the Industrial Revolution, not just in America, but in the world. Approximately 600,000 slaves were shipped from Africa to the United States. Because of slaves' work, the Mississippi River Valley had more millionaires per capita than anywhere else in the United States. However, less than a quarter of southern whites owned slaves, and only 0.1% of whites owned over 100. Slaves brought with them from Africa their many languages, skills, and personal values, which helped shape the American economy and culture.